We all hope for a dignified end, but sometimes the universe just gets bored.
What is wrong with these people?
Welcome to the Reaper's blooper reel. Here are the top 10 most ridiculous, unbelievable ways people have actually kicked the bucket. Starting off at number 10, we have a cautionary tale about personal grooming. Meet Hans Steininger. In the mid-16th century, Hans was a pretty big deal. He was the mayor of Braunau, Austria, a man of status, power, and respect. But nobody really cared about his politics. They cared about his facial hair. Hans possessed a beard that was 4.5 feet long. That is not a beard, that is a lifestyle choice. That is a genetic flex. Usually, Hans was very responsible with his pride and joy. He kept it rolled up, carefully tucked into a velvet pouch specifically designed for his chin, ensuring it didn't drag through the mud. But on September 28, 1567, disaster struck. A fire broke out in the town. Smoke filled the air, bells rang, and chaos took over the streets. Hans, being the mayor, leapt into action, or perhaps he just leapt to save himself. In the sheer panic of the moment, he forgot the most important rule of having a 4-foot beard: roll it up. As he sprinted to the top of a staircase, the beard came loose. It unraveled like a carpet. Hans stepped on his own facial hair, tripped violently, and tumbled down the entire flight of stairs, snapping his neck at the bottom. The man survived the politics of the 1500s only to be assassinated by his own follicles. He literally died from being too hipster. Let this be a warning to everyone currently growing out a quarantine beard. Keep it trimmed or keep it tucked. Moving on to number 9, we have a story that proves good manners can be fatal. Let's talk about Tycho Brahe. If you don't know Tycho, you should. He was a 16th century Danish astronomer, an absolute party animal, and a nobleman who, I am not making this up, wore a prosthetic nose made of brass because he got his real nose sliced off in a duel over a math equation. That's the kind of guy we are dealing with. In October 1601, Tycho attended a lavish, high-stakes banquet in Prague. The wine was flowing, the food was endless, and the conversation was likely incredibly intellectual. But as the hours dragged on, Tycho realized he had made a tactical error. He really had to use the bathroom. However, in the 1600s, social etiquette was brutal. Leaving the table before the host was considered a massive insult, a career-ending faux pas. So Tycho sat there. He sweated. He squirmed. He smiled politely while his bladder slowly turned into a ticking time bomb. He held it through the appetizer. He held it through the roast. He held it through dessert. By the time he finally got home, the damage was catastrophic. He was unable to urinate, likely due to a burst bladder or a severe infection caused by the retention. He spent the next 11 days in excruciating agony before finally dying. His last words were reportedly, "Let me not seem to have lived in vain," which is a beautiful sentiment, but let's be real, the man died of politeness. He valued social standing over biological necessity. The lesson here: if nature calls, answer it. The host will get over it. Your kidneys won't. Jumping forward to the modern era for number 8, we have a story of corporate hubris that is almost too cinematic to be true. Meet Gary Hoy. It's 1993, and Gary is a sharp, respected senior partner at a law firm in Toronto. Gary was a smart guy, but he had one specific party trick that he loved. His office was on the 24th floor of the Toronto Dominion Centre, and he loved to demonstrate the structural integrity of the building's glass windows to impress interns. He had done this trick dozens of times. He would get a running start, launch himself shoulder first at the glass, and bounce off. It was a terrifying but effective way to prove a point about modern engineering. On July 9th, a group of law students was visiting. Gary, feeling confident, decided to perform the stunt again. He backed up. He ran. He hit the glass with a thud. And he was right, the glass did not break. The engineers had done their job perfectly. However, the window frame decided it had had enough. The entire pane of glass popped out of the wall, still intact. Gary Hoy, likely with a look of total confusion, fell 24 stories to the courtyard below. It is the ultimate irony. He won the argument, but he lost his life. The glass was unbreakable, but gravity is undefeated. At number 7, we stay in the courtroom for a story that is equal parts tragic and heroic. Meet Clement Vallandigham. The year is 1871, and Clement is a defense attorney trying to save his client, Thomas Magehian, from a murder charge. The victim had been shot in a bar fight, and Clement's theory was that the victim had actually shot himself by accident while drawing his pistol from a kneeling position. It was a bold theory, and Clement needed to sell it to the jury. So, during a break in the proceedings at his hotel room with fellow lawyers present, Clement decided to run a simulation. He picked up a pistol that he genuinely believed was unloaded. He put it in his pocket, knelt down, and reenacted the motion of pulling it out. He snagged the trigger on his clothing and bang. He shot himself directly in the abdomen. The wound was fatal, and he died the next day. But here is the wildest part of the story. His demonstration was so convincing that the jury acquitted his client. Thomas Magehian walked free because his lawyer literally proved the theory by dying. Clement lawyeried himself to death. That is a level of dedication to the job that is both admirable and absolutely insane. Now, for number 6, we have a disaster that sounds like a joke until you realize the body count. We are going to Boston, January 15, 1919. It was an unusually warm winter day. In the north end of the city stood a massive storage tank containing 2.3 million gallons of molasses, awaiting fermentation. Suddenly, the rivets on the tank popped like machine gun fire. The tank exploded. Now, when you think of molasses, you think of something slow. Slow as molasses in January, right? Wrong. This was a tidal wave of brown goo, 25 feet high, moving at 35 miles per hour. It didn't just ooze, it crashed. It smashed buildings into kindling. It knocked an elevated train off its tracks. The physics of it were terrifying. Because it was winter, the molasses was thick and heavy, acting like a tsunami of liquid cement. People were caught in it and couldn't swim. The more they struggled, the deeper they sank. Horses were stuck like flies on flypaper. In the end, 21 people were killed and 150 injured. It took weeks to clean the city. The harbor ran brown for months, and for decades the locals claimed that on hot summer days, you could still smell the sweet, sickly scent of molasses rising from the pavement. It's a tragedy, absolutely. But dying by high-speed breakfast topping is a fate so bizarre it's hard to comprehend. Number 5 takes us back to the Viking Age for a story of revenge from beyond the grave. Meet Sigurd the Mighty, the Earl of Orkney. Sigurd was a classic Viking, big, strong, and fond of conquering things. In the year 892, he challenged a local Scottish leader, Maelbrigt the Bucktooth, to a battle. As the name suggests, Maelbrigt had a very prominent, sharp buck tooth. Sigurd won the battle easily. In true Viking fashion, he cut off Maelbrigt's head and strapped it to his saddle as a grisly trophy. He gathered his men and rode home, feeling invincible. But as he galloped across the Scottish countryside, the severed head of his enemy began to bounce against his leg. Specifically, that famous buck tooth rubbed against Sigurd's calf. It eventually broke the skin. In a time before antibiotics, this was a death sentence. The scratch became infected, the infection turned to sepsis, and the mighty Sigurd died. Think about the scoreboard here. Sigurd won the battle, killed the guy, decapitated him, and still got killed by him. It is the ultimate post-mortem revenge. Maelbrigt literally bit him from the afterlife. At number 4, we have a death that sounds like a cartoon sketch. Let's visit ancient Greece and the playwright Aeschylus. He is known as the father of tragedy, the man who practically invented drama. According to legend, a prophecy told Aeschylus that he would be killed by a falling house. Terrified by this, he decided to leave the city and live in the open fields, where there were no houses to fall on him. Smart move, right? Enter the bearded vulture. These large birds have a very specific way of eating tortoises. They grab the tortoise, fly high into the air, and drop it onto a rock to crack the shell open. On this particular day, a vulture was flying over the field where Aeschylus was sitting. The bird looked down and saw the playwright's bald, shiny head reflecting the sunlight. Mistaking the bald head for a smooth white rock, the vulture dropped the tortoise. It struck Aeschylus dead instantly. He spent his whole life avoiding falling houses, only to be taken out by a falling turtle. It is a death so improbable, so ironically tragic, that even Aeschylus couldn't have written it. Number 3 brings us to the Eiffel Tower in 1912. This is the story of Franz Reichelt, an Austrian tailor living in Paris. France was obsessed with the idea of creating a parachute suit, a wearable coat that would allow pilots to survive a plane crash. He had tested early prototypes with dummies and they mostly failed. But France was undeterred. He convinced the authorities to let him conduct a test from the first deck of the Eiffel Tower. The police assumed he was going to use a dummy, but when France arrived on February 4th, he was wearing the suit himself. It looked like a bulky canvas tent. A large crowd gathered. News cameras were rolling. You can actually watch this footage today. It is haunting. France stands on the ledge for a long time. You can see him hesitating. He looks down, then up, then down again. His body knows this is a bad idea. His survival instinct is screaming at him. But the pressure of the crowd, the cameras, and his own pride is too much. He finally leaps. The suit catches no air. He falls straight down, hitting the frozen ground and creating a literal crater. The autopsy later suggested he actually died of a heart attack during the fall before he even hit the ground. His heart gave up on the idea before gravity even finished the job. Number 2 is a collision of Hollywood glamour and mechanical failure. Isadora Duncan was one of the most famous dancers of the 1920s. She was the mother of modern dance, a free spirit who loved drama, wine, and fashion. Her signature look involved wearing incredibly long, flowing silk scarves. On September 14, 1927, in Nice, France, she was leaving a party with a handsome mechanic. She hopped into the passenger seat of an open-top Amilcar sports car. She threw her long, hand-painted silk scarf around her neck, letting it trail behind her in the breeze. As she waved to her friends, she reportedly shouted, "Adieu, mes amis, je vais à la gloire." Goodbye, my friends, I go to glory. As the car accelerated, the heavy silk scarf caught in the spokes of the rear wheel. In a split second, it wound tight, yanking her backward and breaking her neck instantly. It was sudden, brutal, and tragically cinematic. She lived for the drama, and in the end, the drama claimed her. And finally, we reach number 1, the death that we should all honestly aspire to in a weird way. Let's talk about Chrysippus. He was a Greek philosopher, a Stoic, a man who spent his life contemplating logic and the universe. You would expect a man like this to die peacefully in his sleep, or perhaps while debating the meaning of life. One day, Chrysippus was watching a donkey eat some of his figs. For some reason, he found this incredibly funny. The sight of the donkey chewing the sticky figs just tickled him. He yelled out to his servant, "Now give the donkey a drink of wine to wash down the figs." And then he started laughing, and he couldn't stop. He laughed so hard, gasping for air, tears streaming down his face, that he went into cardiac arrest and died. The man literally died of laughter at a donkey joke. A joke that, let's be honest, is a solid 3 out of 10 at best. But he went out in a state of pure, unfiltered joy. Of all the ways to leave this world, by turtle, by beard, or by molasses, exiting on a high note of laughter isn't the worst way to go. So there you have it. 10 people who prove that the universe has a twisted sense of humor. These stories remind us that life is fragile, weird, and completely unpredictable. We spend so much time planning for the future, but we can't plan for a falling tortoise or a loose beard. It's a reminder not to take things too seriously, because eventually the lights are going to go out, and for all you know, it might happen while you're laughing at a donkey. So, live your life, watch out for falling glass, and maybe, just maybe, keep your beard trimmed. Which of these deaths unlocked a new fear for you? Are you more afraid of molasses or polite dinner parties? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this trip to the dark side of history, Hit that like button and subscribe for more unbelievable stories, mysteries, and mayhem. Stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.